من عذرخواهی میکنم بابت مشکلی به وجود اومده. اینستاگرام بعضی شبا نمیدونم چقدر اذیت میکنه. من الان یه چک بکنم ببینم که نت چجوریه اوضاعش. Okay, Kim, I'm just sending you the request.
Okay, hopefully this works a little better.
Yes, I just restarted my Wi-Fi. I think maybe it's better now. I'm changing. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you great.
Go, okay, that's perfect. I changed the source now. I think
Yes, I'm just using my mobile data, but it doesn't work as well.
okay, finally I'm here.
Yay!
Can you hear me?
Yes!
Finally. I think there was a problem. I changed the source many times and now it's okay. Okay, sorry for interruption. Yes, I keep my fingers crossed. Okay, you were telling us about the yoga. Sorry, we lost your voice.
Okay, so I was talking about how I found yoga and it really helped me to overcome my injury very quickly, actually. And I was able to get back to playing after just a few weeks, which I know is really atypical for many people with a musician's wellness related injury. And these injuries are so complex. And they, they're influenced by a wide variety of factors. But yoga did help me a lot, and I'm so grateful for that. And I ended up like practicing yoga kind of on and off for a number of years. And when I was in my master's degree at Indiana University, there was an opportunity to take, as an elective, I took a postural alignment class for musicians. And it was taught by an Alexander technique teacher, Megan Johnson. And her class was so inspiring to me, and it helped me in a lot of ways to become a more natural player. I felt like my Alexander technique lessons in that environment were more helpful for my playing sometimes than my actual viola lessons, which is kind of funny. And it just kind of continued this interest in musicians' wellness. And then I had the opportunity to take a Pilates course as an elective towards my master's that was offered at IU. And I took it just for fun because I was like, you know what, I could really like get back into shape and just do something for my overall health. What I didn't expect was for that course to be really focused on diagnosing postural issues in the general public and learning how to prescribe very specific Pilates exercises to help them undo their corrective muscle imbalances. So after that, oh, sorry?
Could you please let us know more about the postural alignment actually course and the teacher that used to teach Alexander technique? How was that?
Sure. So the Alexander technique teacher was Megan Johnson, and the course was called Postural Alignment for Musicians. And over the course of the semester, we learned about the basics of body mapping and kind of learning how the body works from a functional anatomy perspective, and how we can bring mindfulness to the way that our body is supposed to be aligned from a postural perspective, and how we can use that in a way to perform with more ease. And every single class we had to, we wrote like journal entries about, there was a wide variety of questions that she asked us, like, how does it feel when you walk on stage and you're about to perform something from memory? Like, what is the first thing that you feel in your body? And I know that just going through those journal prompts brought up a lot of interesting things for me that I had never really focused on before. In addition to that, we also signed up for individual Alexander technique lessons that we would have during that class time. So I did get to experience Alexander technique through that course, and I found that it was so helpful. And that really inspired me. I actually was considering going and becoming an Alexander technique teacher until I realized that it was, you know, a 4-year degree program. And I was like, oh, I think I'll just
another 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And after that, you took some lessons in Pilates?
Yeah, so after that, I went through a Pilates certification course through Marathon. It's called Stott Pilates. And that particular style is really focused on correcting muscular imbalances. And in some ways, I felt like the knowledge presented there was just it was so vast and so detailed that at the time, I wasn't quite able to understand everything that I was being told. It was kind of like trying to drink water out of a fire hydrant. It was just so much information. And after that Pilates training, which was another semester long course, I went on to get my yoga certification because I've always been really drawn towards yoga more than Pilates or other fitness modalities, just because I feel like in terms of my mental health, yoga has been a lot more helpful. That whole idea of focusing inward and really like letting yourself sit with discomfort are both things that have helped me tremendously in developing my own meditation practice, and also overcoming performance anxiety, and also, you know, my other mental health issues that I still struggle with.
Good. You know, the time that you were telling us your story, I was thinking that it's exactly the same in my mind. We have to have different knowledge about different techniques and methods, and we have to put them together to actually optimize everything according to ourselves, according to our body, according to our mind, according to our situation, according to our size. We have to apply everything and learn many, many other techniques and put them all together to see which is the best for us. And you did exactly the same. And did you find any connection between them? For example, you just go from one thing to another and explore different things?
Yeah, so I basically, after I got my yoga certification and I started noticing all of these connections, I was so inspired to just keep learning more knowledge and information as much as I could about functional anatomy, kinesiology, and musicians' wellness issues, and just going through different generalized like fitness modality trainings and taking whatever little nuggets of information I can, and just like holding on to those and being like, oh, that would be really helpful for musicians, to kind of expand my own personal style of teaching. And so it's been a long process, and I feel like I'm still learning and I'm still evolving with what I teach, which I mean, I think is important too, that we're always open to new ideas. And I ended up calling myself the Aligned Musician. Originally, I had the Instagram handle Movement for Musicians because I was really just about like any movement is helpful for musicians. And then I don't know, this idea or the name, the Aligned Musician, popped into my head one day because I'm so passionate about postural alignment and corrective exercise. And what's been interesting is that over the last year, I've kind of shifted a little bit into this like more spiritual definition of aligned, in that like we all are seeking to have a source of inner knowledge and making sure that what we put out into the world is a reflection of what is truly inside each of us and our inner knowing. And I find that really interesting too, because I think in terms of musicians' wellness, it's important that we all speak our truth and that we feel very aligned in what we're bringing into the world. And sometimes that can really be squandered through our education system, through, you know, what teachers, what colleagues tell us about our playing. And it can be really hard to like actually tap inside to that inner sense of knowing. So I know I'm kind of all over the place with what I think musicians' wellness is and what I think is important to acknowledge and explore if you're a musician.
Yes, thank you. And please let us know about yoga for musicians. What is the difference between typical and ordinary yoga session and the ones that you offer for musicians? What's the difference?
So, I mean, yoga is such a broad term. And I just want to start out by saying that the practice of yoga that we have here in the West, a lot of it is focused on the physical practice of yoga, but it's actually so much more than that. It's an entire philosophy. I mean, yoga was created over, 5,000 years ago. And it's a tradition really rooted in Hinduism. And although it's practiced by many other people, and you don't have to be of Hindu lineage to enjoy and appreciate and internalize the practice of yoga, I think it's important that we understand that. So yoga for musicians, to me, and the way that I tried to adapt this practice is really more about how do we make yoga accessible for musicians? Because a lot of times, I think that there's so many different kinds of yoga as well, but I used to love power vinyasa classes and stuff that was really intense. And I'm just thinking like being in a high plank to low plank, like chaturanga, or even a downward facing dog for any period of time for a musician that may not know how to warm up their hands or may not have the upper body strength in a way that's supportive to their entire body, that could potentially exacerbate any kind of issues or pain or injury they might already be experiencing. So I believe that yoga for musicians should be a way to make yoga more accessible. And I think that, that's what many of us are doing that are yoga for musicians teachers. And all of us come from different lineages or backgrounds. And so we're kind of presenting our own variation of what yoga can be for musicians.
Good. As I understood, you do not give musician exercises that may actually put weights on their hands, yes? You prevent those exercises. Am I right?
Yeah, so if you were to take like a private yoga session with me, I would incorporate some corrective exercises based on what you might need. And I think that it's okay to really, from a yoga for musicians perspective, thinking about what different asanas or yoga positions can do to help counter the effects of sitting long periods of time or playing your instrument long periods of time. There's absolutely specific yoga poses that can undo that. And so from a physical perspective, I'll definitely incorporate some of those things. And if it was a private session, I would definitely incorporate way more things that could help to on a more individual level.
Okay, promise me to give some of those exercises to us at the end of the session.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you, thank you. And have you introduced or invented any new exercises specifically, for example, because you play the viola, for example, you said this exercise, the posture of the viola is this, and I invented a new exercise that actually do the opposite of that. You know, we have a fixed posture, and for example, I've invented a new exercise that has exactly the opposite posture for just preventing any tension. Is there any special exercise that you have worked on?
Yeah, so when I had the platform movement for musicians, I had like all these ideas about specific exercises that I was creating, and I've kind of stepped back from that a little bit because I think that it can be helpful to think in a more general perspective sometimes. But something that I'm very aware of, and that maybe not everyone is aware of, and you can do this exercise right now, actually, just like visualize or pretend like you're playing your instrument, whatever instrument it is.
Okay.
And then without changing the direction of your hands or your arms, bring your hands down towards the side. And so for me, I'm going to just back up and show you. So for me, I'm going from playing viola, and now without doing it, I have my hands by my side. And you'll notice that with my left arm, my thumb is out, and with my right arm, my thumb is in. So what does that mean? Well, if your thumb is touching the side of your leg, that means your arm is in internal rotation. If your thumb is facing outward, that means that your arm is in external rotation. So if I was playing...
Okay, let's do that. Because it got insane. Okay.
So whatever...
I imagine that I'm playing guitar, yes?
If you're playing guitar, okay. Whatever angle your hands are at, just leave them there and just straighten your elbows. And if you're playing, you know, flute, same thing, straighten your elbows. And notice what angle, if I'm playing flute, I might be like this. What angle do your hands end up at? Don't try to change anything.
The left thumb it has been rotated a little bit inside, and the right thumb has been rotated a little bit outward.
Right. So what that means is, yes, if you have your thumb towards your leg, that means that your arm, your humerus, is in internal rotation. And if your thumb is away from your leg, then that means that your humerus is in external rotation when you play your instrument. Some instruments, I'm just thinking off the bat, like, I don't know, trumpet, maybe trombone, instruments where both of your hands are in front of you, maybe clarinet, both of your arms are going to be in internal rotation. Okay, so what does that mean? That means that you should do the opposite. So if you know, I'm a violist, my left arm is always in external rotation. My right arm is always in internal rotation. Okay, but, you know, I'm on a computer a lot. My external rotation in the left arm might have some internal rotation throughout the day. It might be okay. But especially when an arm is in internal rotation, you want to counter that action. So I find it helpful. In my yoga practice, when I do something like, when I do something like, if I have my hands in cactus arms, I know this is what we teach here in Arizona a lot, but to bring the arms, elbows wide, fingers spread wide, I might sometimes actually keep my right arm in external rotation to counter, right, it being an internal all the time. And I'll actually take my left arm down and press this arm behind so that I'm finding internal rotation on the left side that normally is an external rotation. And
when your hands are up, you are actually pushing backwards or you are pushing forwards?
I'm pushing both shoulder blades together, the heart is open, and this hand, the left hand, I'm pressing gently backwards. So I'm finding that internal rotation through the left side and that external rotation through the right, which is the opposite of when I play my instrument.
Got that.
Does that make sense?
Got that.
And if you do the opposite, just as a test, I know this feels a lot easier and I have a greater range of motion, which makes sense because that's what I do to play my instrument most of the time.
Yes. Yes, when it goes downside, it's a little bit strange for me as well. I'm not really comfortable with that.
Oh yeah, it's pretty uncomfortable to do the opposite action of what we normally do every day. Always just be trying to find that opposite movement. And
nice.
Yeah.
Yes, it was really nice. Thank you. And okay, we talked about the yoga, and let's go through breath work. Let us know about breath work and what it is actually.
Yes. So, okay. So I talked a little bit earlier about how yoga is more than just the physical practice. It's also many other things. And I could say in my background, because there are other styles of yoga, that in Hatha yoga specifically, there are a certain number of limbs, and each limb of yoga is designed all together to prepare you for deep levels of meditation. And so some of the yogic limbs are different kinds of meditation. The first two, in some traditions, they're considered the first two, are asana, which is what the first thing that comes to mind when most people think about yoga, you know, the warrior twos, the beautiful asana practice that we see on Instagram. That is just asana. And the second part is pranayama, which is breath work. And just as we need food and water to survive and to nourish our physical bodies, we also need breath exercises in order to feed our lungs and our circulatory system, our respiratory system, and in some ways to help us regulate our nervous system. So breathwork is really, really important, and it can be incredibly helpful for musicians.
Yes, it really is. Sometimes you see the instrumentalists, while they are playing, for example, their instrument, they actually hold their breath and they do not breathe normally. So, you know, holding breath, for holding breath, you have to contract lots of muscles and put a lot of tension in different places of body to actually hold your breath. And when you just let go of that, when you are aware of that, because everything is awareness. When you are aware of what you are doing, you can play your instrument more freely. And while you are practicing, because sometimes when we practice music, the time is not actually short. So if just imagine for that period of time in your day, your body is not receiving enough oxygen. So you might have a lot of problems. But if you know the breath work, You can apply it to the time that you are playing your instrument as well. So during the time that you are playing, you are breathing, your body is in a normal condition.
Yes, absolutely. And I think a common misconception about breath work is that it's only designed to calm you down. And that's actually the furthest thing from the truth. There's many different kinds of breath exercises that can get you into a place of more activation of your nervous system or less. And if you know how to listen into your body and what you're feeling, you can actually use breath exercises as a way to help you regulate. So I know for me, as someone that really struggles with depression and anxiety, I found breath work to be so incredibly helpful. And I quit drinking coffee about, oh my gosh, it's been like 3 years now for medical reasons. And breath work has helped me so much, actually, to help me not need so much caffeine from drinking tea now, to help me find alert, but also focused and calm. And breath work can totally
good. That's really good. I have to start breath work instead of, you know, consuming coffee. If it helps, of course. But I totally believe you, because breath work is really one of a kind. And when you do that, it has many, many advantages, and it really helps you to calm down, be fresh, and be ready again, which is really important for a musician. Because when we are practicing music, we don't want to practice it when we are tired, when we are out of energy, and when we are not concentrated, you know, when we don't have concentration. Okay, why are we practicing music? We are like a robot. There's no progress. But when you do the breath work and you become fresh and you go up, you understand what you are doing, which is really, really nice. And I totally appreciate it. That's wonderful. Okay. And let us know more about that. Is there any special exercise you usually give your students about the breath work, or something that you do while you are playing or in your breaks?
So I think the first thing is, I also want to point out, like, and remind people that are watching that I am not a wind player, I'm not a brass player, and I'm not a singer. I'm a string player, and I find so much value actually to doing these breath exercises. And as somebody that has anxiety and I also have asthma, I did not know how to breathe before I started doing this kind of breath work. I often had, my breath was shallow. I noticed that in times of stress, I found it very difficult to breathe any lower than like my chest or my heart. And I felt like it was a struggle sometimes to maybe even just slow my breath down or to bring awareness to my breath. So the first thing that I recommend people do is to, and we can go through one of these breath practices in a little bit, but just putting your hands on your belly and trying to feel the breath come in through the nose or through the mouth and fill up the belly first instead of our chest. And sometimes even just sitting here and getting used to that feeling, because I know for me, I also have a dance background, and for a long time I was told to like suck my stomach in, and I thought that having ab engagement was part of good posture. And I think a lot of us are afraid to let our bellies relax and to actually breathe from our bellies, because it can make us look like we have, you know, a beer belly or something. But it's actually the healthy thing to do. If you look at babies breathe, you'll see that they naturally breathe from their bellies, and that's how we should breathe too.
Okay, Kim, could you give me a couple of seconds to translate this exercise to people who speak Farsi?
Okay, absolutely.
thank you thank you. دوستان عزیزی که به زبان فارسی با ما، کی میخواد یه سری تکنیک تنفس بهمون بگه؟ من تکنیک قبلا باش انجام دادم، خلاصش رو بهتون میگم دیگه، با ما بیاید. یه تنفس داره که تنفس شکمی میخواد انجام بده، بعد تنفسی داره که میاد روی قسمت قفسه سینه انجام میده و بعد میاد روی قسمت در واقع چی بهش میگیم، استخوان ترقوه میاد اونجا، کالربون میاد توی اون قسمت. حالا من مرحله باش میام. تمرین جالبیه، بعد که انجام دیدی او خیلی حس آرامش بهتون میده. باش میریم مرحله و به ما توضیح میده. اوکی کیم، we are ready.
Ready? Okay, so this is called Dirga Pranayama, or three-part breathing. And so you're going to want to find a comfortable seated position, and make sure that your spine is long, that you're sitting tall, and that you're stacking your shoulders over the hips, just so that we're in an aligned, safe position before we begin. And you can have your legs crossed. Sometimes it feels good to be in a kneeling position. But wherever you are, just take your hands and gently place them over your belly. You're welcome to close your eyes or soften your gaze. And if at any point you feel uncomfortable during this exercise, you have the option of sitting with that discomfort, just noticing what it feels like. And you can just stay at the first stage or stay at the second stage. You don't have to go through all three stages if you're not ready to yet. Just giving yourself permission to meet yourself wherever you're at today. So with your hands on your belly, start to take a deep inhale through your nose and see if you can notice how your belly expands 360 degrees. And on the exhale out the nose, just a regular easy breath, how the belly button comes in towards the spine as you release the breath. So we're taking just a few cycles of breath. Each inhale, and this might not be completely anatomically correct, but imagine that the breath is coming in through the nose, tracing down your spine, filling up the belly all the way to the base of your rib cage. And then the exhale, it releases in the opposite direction, tracing the spine up and out. We're not trying to pause or hold the breath at any time. The inhales naturally become exhales. The exhales naturally become inhales. And you might even notice how there's expansion through your low back as well each time you take an inhale. Take one more breath here. We're going to go right into the next stage of Dirga breath. Remember, you can stay here at the first stage if you like. The second stage, you're just taking both hands, palms facing down, bringing this to either side of the rib cage. This is so that you can feel the expansion through the chest. So whenever you're ready, start to take a deep inhale through the nose. Feel the belly expand first, just as we did with the first hand placement. And then feel the expansion through the rib cage, 360 degrees. And on the exhale, the rib cage, the chest releases, and then the belly. And it's almost as if your torso is like a cup of water, and it fills from the bottom up as you breathe. And on the exhale, it releases from the top down. And you might notice with this two-stage breathing here that your breath might become a little bit slower, more calm, peaceful. Take another round of breath here. And remember, you're welcome to stay at this stage. Going on to the third stage now. Traditionally, you bring your hands to your shoulder blades, elbows up towards the sky. Although sometimes for musicians, this one's a little challenging. So I invite you, as another option, can bring your hands to the tops of your shoulders or feel for your collarbones with your thumbs. And as you take an inhale, same thing, fill up through the belly and then the chest. And then notice how your collarbones expand slightly to accommodate more air at the top of your lungs. And this gently, naturally turns into an exhale, releasing the tops of your shoulders, your chest, and then the belly. So we're breathing into our middle lung and the upper lungs. And we're using the diaphragm to help us do this, even though you might not feel like it's your diaphragm. Just take another deep inhale just like this, feeling that expansion in the belly, the chest, the collarbones, and then release the collarbones, chest, and belly. And whenever you're ready, you can release your hands, palms facing up into your lap, your eyes closed or your gaze softened, just noticing what it feels like inside. What does it feel like to be here now in this moment? And there are no right or wrong answers. Just acknowledge how you feel now in comparison to how you felt just a few moments ago before we started this specific breathing technique. And then whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes. How did that feel?
Wonderful. Wonderful. It really made me relax, and I'm calm now. And as I told you before, the time that we did the exercise, this time was better. Now I'm checking every part of my body. You introduced 3 positions in my body. And now that I'm breathing, I'm inhaling. I understand each part differently, and especially the spine. The spine is really helpful here. I mentioned it before. You feel that the spine is, because when you are breathing, the spine is actually moving as well. So you feel the movement, and you feel that every part of your body is relaxed, and it really gives you a peace, actually helps you to peace your mind as well. Now my mind is more free, which is good.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you so much. And yes, this is exactly why, I mean, that's what this was designed for, as a way to help you get to deeper levels of meditation. And so you can try meditating directly after your Dirga Pranayama, or you can go right into practicing and see if it helps you find a little bit more focus and calm. This is one of my favorite breath exercises that I like to do before I perform, actually, because it's so easy to do. It only takes, I mean, that was only a couple minutes, and you feel completely different afterward.
Yes, it was wonderful. And when you have students in your classes, do you usually introduce these breathwork exercises at the beginning? Are they their first lessons?
Sometimes, yes, this is a very introductory breathwork practice that I like to introduce first. And on my Patreon, I actually have a pranayama course that I'm building out, where we start with practices like Dirga and Ujjayi, which is victorious breath, and we move into progressively more challenging pranayama techniques. But I think also that just this pranayama, this Dirga 3-part breathing, this can be so helpful. I've taught this actually in viola lessons sometimes with my students, just as a way for them to feel like they are in control of their nervous system. And, you know, even when we're performing on stage, if we take an inhale and send it to the belly and really feel like you're taking a full inhale and then release that on the exhale, nobody will notice that in the audience, first of all. But second of all, it's going to provide you with a sense of ease and a sense of calm, because you are putting a little more pressure on the vagus nerve, which, sorry to get a little technical, but is responsible for engaging the parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for our sense of ease and calm. And fun fact, if you are in that state of parasympathetic nervous system, it's much harder for adrenaline to be in your body and for you to experience like shakiness or any number of things. So it really, really is a powerful tool.
Thank you. And you mentioned that you suffer from asthma as well, yes?
Yes.
And you contemplate it with these breath works?
Yeah, I found for myself, I know that everybody's different, but I've been able to come off of my steroid inhaler through the use of practicing pranayama regularly. That's not always the case. I do have to use like a rescue inhaler if I'm doing any kind of intense cardio for a long time, like I can't run outside. And I do have to use a rescue inhaler if we're having monsoon season. Where I'm in Arizona, we have really crazy dust storms. You might experience them in Iran as well, but we have like haboobs and lots of like crazy dust storms here. So when that happens, my asthma definitely suffers.
And in a short sentence, just let us know how this breath work help us prevent performance-related injuries. How do they actually work in our body?
So the thing is that our mind and body are so connected. And when you realize that tension is building up inside of your body in any way, unnecessary tension, that can be a purely physical thing to being uncomfortable. It might be a response to the way that we're set up. But a lot of times I found that it's actually more of a mindset issue or a needing to feel calm or safe in your body. And so pranayama can help with that. It can help you prevent injury by helping you to feel more safe when you're performing. And it gives you a sense of control over your nervous system, which can really help with things like performance anxiety. I think they're very interrelated.
Yes, exactly. Thank you for the clarification. It was perfect. And there are some questions, but I will put them for the end of the session because now I just made you promise me something about giving us a yoga exercise.
Oh, yes.
I'm ready for that. Let's do that, and after that we'll go through a little, maybe 2 or 3 more questions. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. So I'm just going to take you through my variation of a half sun salutation. And this is something that I do sometimes in a practice room just to help me get warmed up a little bit. But I'll take you through that right now and show you. So
do it before playing the instrument, yes?
Yeah, before practicing viola in the practice room,
okay.
I'll go through like a...
Okay, let me just join you as well.
Okay, so we're going to start by standing up. I'm going to stand back here so you can see me a little bit better. And start with your feet about hip distance apart, hips stacked over your ankles, shoulders stacked over your hips. You might want to find a micro bend in your knees. And we're going to start by each time I cue a breath, you're going to take an inhale or exhale through the nose. But if you need to take additional breaths, you're absolutely welcome to. So inhale, bring your arms overhead, reach your fingers wide. Exhale, bend your knees, find a forward fold. Release your head and neck. You can let your arms hang. Drag your chin towards your chest. Start to inhale, squeeze your glutes together to help you rise all the way back up to standing. And as you inhale, draw your shoulders up towards your ears, roll them back and down on the exhale. Inhale, reach both arms overhead. Exhale, peel your elbows out towards the sides, fingers spread wide. We're finding that cactus arm. Press your heart center forward, squeeze your shoulder blades together. Now, if you want to use that information to find an opposite stretch for yourself in your instrument, you're welcome to. And exhale, sweep both arms behind you, sit back. We're finding a chair pose. So sitting back as far as you can. Knees stacked over the ankles. Squeeze your shoulder blades together once more. Keep your chest lifted. Looks great, Ahmed. Inhale, arms overhead. Sit back a little bit farther. This is Utkatasana, chair pose. Exhale, bring the hands together. Find another forward fold. You can bend your knees. Taking an inhale, find a halfway lift. And you can bring your hands to your shins or to your thighs. You're also welcome to find airplane arms. Any variation is valid. And exhale, forward fold, bend your knees. And slowly come back up to standing. If you want to, you can shake that out a little bit. And if you're not quite warmed up yet, you can always repeat that half sun salutation as many times as you need.
Good, good. Thank you. I'm sorry if I did not do the exercise well, because it was a little bit difficult to see you and do the exercise at the same time. Because I had to see you in a lateral view, it was a little bit difficult. Sorry if I was not doing it perfectly.
Oh, it's all right. And that's the thing with yoga, is that it's important to listen into your body and notice how it feels to do those movements to the best of your ability. And if you don't look quite like me or quite like a yoga instructor when you're doing yoga, that's completely fine. The most important thing is just to listen inward.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, it was all great. And the last thing, before I go to those questions, let us know about the aligned musician and what does it aim at?
So the aligned musician is basically just how I've branded myself. I offer a Patreon, which is a membership website. And so I offer weekly live classes in movement and breath work. I have many recorded classes regarding breath work. And also under that umbrella, I'm going to start offering in November group breathwork classes, which I'm really excited for too. I also, as the aligned musician, I am a huge advocate for musicians' wellness, and I have a podcast, which is called the Aligned Musician Podcast. That's available on pretty much every platform that podcasts are available. So that's kind of like my two focuses right now. And I offer classes in yoga for musicians. I have some vinyasa classes. I have just like a little bit for everyone and whatever stage you are in your yoga practice or fitness practice.
Good, good. Thank you. Thank you. And how long have you been working on that?
I've been working on it for about the last year. I've really been building that up. Last August, I started teaching a class called Movement for Musicians at Arizona State University. And I offered yoga for musicians classes, and actually my good friend Brianne Borden of Yoga for All Musicians was a co-founder of that with me. The two of us offered so many different kinds of movement classes and gave musicians a look into functional anatomy and the ways that they can be a better advocate for themselves in preventing injury. And so that project kind of, for me, sparked an interest in starting to put some of that content online. And so I transitioned into offering my Patreon account, which has a lot of that information on there. And yeah, that's kind of where I've landed with it. But I love teaching yoga and I love teaching movement practices, and I'm really excited to continue doing that.
Yes, that's a wonderful thing, and I have been following you for a long time, and let's say maybe it's now 6 months, I think, and what you are doing is absolutely great. I've learned many new ideas from your page, and it's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome. And let me ask you something. As we talked before, we are trying to make a community to put all these methods and approaches together and help musicians to stay healthy. Maybe we can make it a mandatory lesson in universities, schools, and musicians learn these methods parallel to their music. You know, for example, if I'm a music student, I start my journey as a musician. There are, for example, a course just that comes with me. I learn those techniques, everything. They can learn, for example, Alexander technique, body mapping, or breath work, meditation, yoga, MuseMuscle. They can learn lots of them together, and they can stay healthy for their lives. You know, because musicians reach a certain level, they face injury and they have to stop for a while and go after those methods. We are trying to make a community. What do you think about that? How we can actually gather all the people who work in this field together?
That's such a great question, and it's one that I've struggled with myself. In how do we really build this community and get there to be more awareness and acceptance surrounding musicians' wellness issues? And I think that there's a variety of things that need to change. And first of all, if you're a music educator, please educate yourself on some of the things that musicians deal with, and become, you know, trauma and culturally informed as well when it comes to musicians' wellness issues, because those are also so important and play a huge role. I think a lot of us were educated in a certain way, and we, without thinking about it or reflecting on the way that we were taught, we just continue that message. And in some ways that's great, because we're learning directly from our teacher who might have this incredible pedagogical line, and we feel like there's a connection there between the great musical masters. But sometimes the methods that they teach for certain minds and certain bodies don't quite match up with what we actually need as individual students. And so the more that educators can be aware of that in general and just be more accepting of that, I think so much will start to change. I also think as musicians, we need to learn really how to advocate for ourselves. Suffering with pain, suffering with mental health issues, suffering with any kind of musician's wellness issue at all is not something to be ashamed of. It's something that is a serious problem. I know recent studies have shown somewhere between 60 to 90% of all musicians will suffer an injury at some point. And instead of shying away from that number or pretending it doesn't exist, I think it starts with us as musicians just owning that and knowing that we struggle, and that it doesn't make us less worthy as humans or as musicians. The music that we have to offer the world is so important, and we each do that in our own unique way. So if you have pain or if you struggle, it's okay. You are one of the majority, and you are valid. And then the last thing is, I think as musicians' wellness people like you and I, Hamed, and anyone else who's in the musicians' wellness space, we need to make this knowledge available to people easily, and we need to make it accessible for people, because I know it's a major issue in the US, but there's so many people for a variety of reasons that don't have access to the medical care that they need. And I think for musicians, especially, the medical care we need is very specific to our needs. And even if we have access to medical care, sometimes it's not really the medical care that's helpful. And so knowing what resources to access, how to find the people that actually have the knowledge about musicians' wellness issues to actually help us and empower us to become more healthy is so, so important.
Yes, I totally agree with you. There are some good points in your speech that I want to elaborate a little bit about them. The first thing was, being shy about facing injury. Just imagine, musicians are athletes of small muscles. So professional athletes, Even the most famous ones face injury, and it's okay. It's also okay for musicians. We shouldn't be shy about that, and there's no taboo, I think. If I face injury, okay, I have faced it. I have to go to treat it. It's really important. If I just ignore it, like musicians who ignore pain, I will face another stage of that injury, another setback. I cannot, put it aside. It's with me until I treat it. I seek treatment and do something for that, which is really important. And I think musicians should not be shy about facing injury. It's a normal condition, and it can happen because we are also, athletes, and it may happen to us. And it was one of the things, and there was another one I forgot what I wanted to tell. I just forgot it. I'm sorry. One more thing about the, educator and the student and the differences. We all know that we are individually specific, and we have different characteristics in our mind, in our body, in everything. Like we are like fingerprints. We are not like each other. No individuals are exactly like each other. So the learning process should be different for everyone as well. Because just imagine I have a teacher who is taller than me, who is, for example, who has bigger hands than mine. So, and his muscle tone is different with me. He has big hands. So the time that he can practice is totally different with me. So I have to find my specific individual practice type. As in MuseMuscle, we always introduce, do you see that when you go to the gym, they give you exercise chart? For example, you have to do this exercise, these reps. They give you the reps, the rest time. We do the exact thing in the MuseMuscle because we think it's necessary. When we start to play, for example, a study, the study only focuses on one technique. So I'm just repeating that technique for maybe 4 pages for 30 minutes. So because it's repetitive, it's absolutely, detrimental, and I can face injury. So we have to do different exercises, and we have to find our specific posture, our specific way of practice, and our specific instrument. Because we cannot say, okay, this is a standard instrument. Okay, my body is different with you. How the instrument could be the same? So it has to change, on everybody's aims as well, in my estimation.
Oh.
Okay.
I just want to say one last thing too on that, is that one of the most powerful things that you can do as an educator to empower your students is to fully embody this idea yourself, and let your students see you physically warming up. Let your students see that you have other things outside of music, because I think for a lot of us, we look up to our teachers and we're like, well, my teacher doesn't warm up before they practice, so why should I? But if you're always seeing your teacher, fully embodying that idea of avoiding injury themselves, that can be incredibly impactful from a student's perspective as well. And so there's ways of showing that and teaching that without making it about like, this is what works for me, so therefore this is what has to work for you too.
Yes, I couldn't agree more with you in that case. It's really important to actually, because sometimes the teacher is the role model. So he or she should try to do something to demonstrate a good way of warming up, exercising, and cooling down to the students, which is really important. Thank you for mentioning that. And for the last question, you saw the movie of MuseMuscle. Do you want to share anything about that with us?
I was just so blown away by the creativity and the knowledge behind what MuseMuscle is. As I was watching it and I saw like the kinesiology tape and the weights on the different points on the hand and on the arms, and then seeing how there was a certain level of like understanding a specific person's posture, ideal posture, and the way that they express themselves through music, and then seeing how different exercises were applied to that person. It was like a light bulb went off in my head, and I was just like, I was totally freaking out.